Hey everybody, I just want to let you know this episode, number 418, is going to be brought to you by a couple different really great websites I think that you've probably already heard about, but we are connected up with them, and we're proud to be a part of what they're doing. One is called Mountain Rose Herbs, and Mountain Rose Herbs is a place where you can get all kinds of really awesome products like herbs and spices. They sell seaweeds, sprouting seeds, different Epicurean organic oils and butters. And but what we do is we get all of our medicinal mushrooms from there. So we get our reishi and our chaga and different adaptogenic mushrooms from there, and in a bulk powder. And we make our teas that way. And that's how we make our medicinal mushroom teas, which are incredible for your immune system and longevity. And reishi and chaga are my favorites to get from there. But they got everything there. They have, like I said, teas, and they have aromatherapy products, essential oils, candles, hydrosols, aroma sprays, and all kinds of really cool stuff. They have different clays and carrier oils, salts, wax, all kinds of cool stuff. And they also sell different diffusers and things that you can, kitchen equipment to make your own capsules and to do all kinds of cool stuff. So Mountain Rose Herbs is kind of like the Amazon of bulk herbs and spices, and you're not going to get a better price anywhere online. And they have the top quality stuff beyond organic, and they have such high standards of what they do, and their prices are just amazing. So check them out. extremehealthradio.com/mountain. And also, episode 418 is brought to you by Nadine Artemis over at Living Libations, where they sell all kinds of beauty products and products for your skin, tooth care products, essential oils, and chocolates, and they sell all kinds of cool stuff. And we love getting our products from Nadine. And what she's doing over at Living Libations. She's been on our show too. Really great person, and I love what they're doing. Their Happy Teeth and Gums product is really awesome if you have cavities or anything like that. And they also have some really great skin products to take care of your skin and beauty care and stuff like that, and as well as different blends and elixirs and botanical oils and stuff like that. So check that out. They are just awesome. I love what they're doing over there. So that is if you want to go, if you're interested in the products like this, you can go to extremehealthradio.com/Nadine, or there will be a link in our show page, which is extremehealthradio.com/418. Or if you just want to go to our store, you'll see a link as well in our store. So go check out Mountain Rose Herbs the next time you're in the market to get some bulk herbs and spices at really great prices. And then go check out Nadine Artemis over at Living Libations through our store. So we would appreciate that, and you're going to get some really great stuff too. So thanks for listening, and let's get on with episode 418.
We on?
We are on. Look at you, jump quick to the draw there. I like that.
Well, I haven't danced to that little groovy song in a while, but it's Friday and I'm feeling feisty.
Good? Feeling feisty?
Welcome to Feisty Friday.
Feisty Friday, I like that.
Thanks.
Feisty Friday, it's good.
You heard it here first, folks.
Better than Free For All Friday, right?
Let's call it Feisty Friday, where we just rant about whatever we want.
Well,
which is pretty much what we do.
This isn't much of a dance song, but you can probably do pretty well.
It's so not a dance song, but you know what? My little own Charlie Brown move over here, it becomes one.
It works, doesn't it?
I love it. Happy Friday, everybody.
Happy Friday. Yeah, we're excited. It's been a while. It's been a while since you and I have been on, and it's been a while since we did a show together, so this is cool.
I've missed it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's good to be back with everybody.
We're excited, and we're going to be talking with Evan Folds today about biodynamic gardening, bioenergetic agriculture. These are all terms that throw me for a loop, so it's going to be nice to have Evan talk about that. And he's the man behind Microbe Makers, which is his new website, as well as Vortex Brewer, Progress Earth, and Progressive Gardens, which is all great websites that make products to help you increase your soil mineralization.
Nice.
And and the health of our soil. So with spring coming, I figured, and you and I are going to be actually having a backyard here
I can't
soon.
even believe it. We'll have some real dirt.
That's going to be good.
To be able to really go for this. So let's learn all we can.
Yes.
This is great.
So Evan Folds, this is episode 418, and we do broadcast live every Friday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific time at extremehealthradio.com/live. And this is episode 418, so if you want to grab the show notes of anything we talk about or all of Evan's websites, they are available at extremehealthradio.com/418. And Mr. Folds was on episode 117 quite a long time ago, a couple years ago. So now he's on 418. So thanks so much, Evan, for being on the show.
Hey, what a pleasure. So that's 300 Fridays?
Feels like
feels
1,000.
Wow. Well, it's been too long, guys. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you reached out to us because you just put together this this new website called Microbe Makers. Is that a brand new site? What's going on there? Yeah,
it is. Just a little housekeeping. We have a couple updates since last we spoke. Progress Earth, we call our company now Progressive Farms. And the Vortex brewer, we've rebranded it. We call it the Microbe Maker. And we kind of learned a little bit about the market and how to position ourselves. And the new name says a little bit more directly about what it does. So we're organized around microbemakers.com, and we're calling it a dealer and a grower network and acting as consultants with our bioenergetic agriculture platform. And we'd love to talk in and out of that as we go here.
Nice.
I really like your tagline, Get Brewing, Grow Life.
Oh,
that's killer.
Yeah, right on.
Well done. That's amazing.
Hey, Evan, is it true that, or is this just one of these things that you hear in the alternative health community that people repeat but they never look into? But is it true that the farmers back in the 30s went to Congress and tried to, or were sort of complaining about the soils not being healthy enough to grow food on?
In the 30s, I'm not familiar with that direct anecdote. I think maybe what you're referring to, maybe Steiner's agriculture course lectures, would kind of maybe be the way I frame that. The Dust Bowl and all of that was really a culmination of improper agronomy. When you take advantage of the soil, you can only do that for so long, and that's really kind of where I see things and where I have a direct association with the retail consumer market in my retail store, and calling around the country to people who are looking to turn their farming around. And we're getting calls from corn farmers that are not doing healthy farming practices, but they're looking for compost tea to save water. They save 20% on their water bill. It's the biggest expense, So the pressures of that kind of reality are really kind of coming to bear, and we're trying to deal with that the best that we can.
But so you just mentioned Rudolf Steiner a second ago, and I went on your Facebook account. I think it was last night, and you posted a website though that you just found. You said with a bunch of his lectures on there.
Yeah, it's amazing. They put it on like a book on tape kind of thing, so that you can listen to it while you're in the shower, and it's just a way of making the information that he brought forward more accessible to the average person. So
I hear David Wolf talk about Rudolf Steiner a lot, and isn't there Steiner schools? Are there Steiner schools? They're called Waldorf schools. Oh, those are They're all over the world. Yeah, it's an incredible, more hands-on, paying attention to the development of a human. You don't really need to read and be analytical until you're 7. And he kind of breaks it up from 1 to 7, 7 to 14, 14 to 21, and so on in terms of the development of the human organism from an energetic perspective. So it's kind of interesting to see how that reconciles with actual development. And you could argue that we're teaching kids things that they don't really need to know yet and testing them on them too early, So he really takes that to heart and looks at it from a human perspective. That's awesome.
I did not know that was the Waldorf. I feel silly about that, but I've known good things about Waldorf, and I know a little bit, but I didn't know that was actually Steiner's thing.
Almost every aspect.
Wow.
Architecture, art. He invented a eurythmy, which is a form of movement. It's kind of a not dance, but yeah, I mean, the threefold social order, economics, basically every aspect of society, he was influential. The fact that we don't know about him, I think, is kind of a testament to how powerful his information is. So I'd invite anybody to dig in. His lectures can be a bit thick, but it's one of those things where every time you read it, it opens you up a little bit more, and you kind of get a little bit deeper. It's really a fascinating exercise.
Was Steiner the one that he sort of viewed the world in terms of relationships? Like he would talk about the relationship between certain energies of the sun and certain energies of our heart and the correlation between the two. He's a really deep guy, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah. I mean, how do you put it into a nutshell? I don't know that you can. But, I mean, for example, he gave lectures on bees that I thought about it when you said the sun. They're a sun organism, and they're directly connected to the activity of the sun. He articulated maybe 90 years ago now why colony collapse disorder is happening. And it's incredible to see this guy giving these lectures this long ago, and he saw all of this coming. So he really... The framework, I guess, that I could offer that resonates with me is you have a physical body, you have an etheric body, you have an astral body, and you have an I organization, he called it, or an ego as a human. And an animal doesn't retain the ego. They don't recognize themselves looking in the mirror, for example. But they have an astral body, and that's the emotion body, if you will. And then plants are kind of one step closer towards the center, where they don't have the emotions in the astral body, but they have an etheric body. And that's kind of like what people say when you're talking about an aura, if you will. It's kind of the frequency that makes us whole and prevents us from falling apart. Why a plant grows up against gravity. There's more to life than what's physically here.
Yeah.
And what we tend to really reside in the modern world is that physical materialistic realm, which is just, it's not irrelevant, but it's only part of the story. So Steiner really gives a framework of not only understanding, but actually influencing these higher energetic bodies. And the premise is that when you have a resonance amongst those bodies that is of health, the physical body is the precipitation of that realm. So you can, homeopathy, for example, if you're familiar with that, is really a mechanism of leveraging water to remember, for lack of a better word, vibrations. That when you spray this frequency to a field, and imagine it like a symphony, and the instrument that's out of tune is the pest infestation. So that resonance from an energetic perspective is really, culminates and precipitates into the physical organism. So a lot of our health is dealing directly with the physicality, pharmaceuticals, these types of things, whereas a lot of, more naturopathic or, energetic medicine work that into from an energetic perspective.
So it's not just gardening.
Yeah.
I think people hear the word gardening and then you hear something like you just spoke about and it completely throws everything we think just quote gardening is about like on its head.
Totally.
It's such a all encompassing, I mean, gardening is life. I mean, growth is life. And that's what you're, I think, delving into a little bit more here for people to understand.
Bingo. Why does, most people are fairly familiar with the idea of sow by the moon. The Farmer's Almanac will tell you to part on a waxing moon versus a waning moon. So you ask that question, why does a plant respond to the moon? Well, the average answer is, it's the extra gravity pulling the plant up. Like in the tides, you have a full moon and the tide is more pronounced. And that's kind of the textbook answer. It's skinny on the sides, it's pulling up on the top of the earth and it's falling on the bottom. And I remember it from grade school. And the reality is, if it was gravity, a plant would be growing down. The moon doesn't win in a tug of war of gravity with the earth. So we kind of set ourselves up to think about these things in a very surface way. And when you start to ask those penetrating questions, things fall apart. Like, Steiner gave lectures on the heart is not a pump. We tell ourselves that the heart moves the blood around in the body, but there's 4 miles of blood vessels in our body. There's no way the muscle as small as the heart can pump that blood. The blood is moving in a fetus before the heart is even formed. So the heart regulates the flow. So there's just all kinds of different ways where we kind of told ourselves this story that really doesn't hold up with how the real world works.
You can't go to a doctor and say the heart doesn't pump blood.
You got that right. Yep. And here we are, right? I mean, that's exactly right.
Yeah, no, that's funny you say that because I've heard multiple people. There's what was it? Some doctor was just talking about the mechanics of that recently, how the heart simply moves blood around, but it's not the pump of blood. And he was talking about Steiner and this whole idea. This is fascinating. What year did Steiner live, and when was he talking about this?
Late 1800s. He was born. I don't remember the year, but he died in 1924, I believe.
Wow.
So It's incredible. It's equally as incredible to read his lectures. He gave over 6,000 lectures and did several books, but mostly lectures, and they've been put into book form. And reading it, I often sit there and think, man, how fascinating it would be to sit in the room with this man speaking this language, because it's from another planet almost.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a paragraph is a whole chapter, you know? It's so, totally.
Well, shoot, our 418 episodes doesn't look so lengthy.
6,000 lectures?
We all got work to do. Right.
6,000 lectures.
6,000 lectures.
Wow.
Amazing. So what was he saying about gardening and the soil and plants and things like that? I mean, I'm sure, a lot of your work is based on him, it sounds like.
Yeah, it is. My experience was, I went to a major university, trained in science, BS in biology, had a religion degree, oddly enough, at the same time. And I was very curious about these things. And I really wasn't inspired by any of it. It was very analytical. It was very from a book. It lacked that spirituality, I think is the word that I would use. And I found this book called Secrets of the Soil. And I'd invite anybody out there to find this book. It changed my life because it really inspired me to this concept that there's more life than what's physical here. There's more going on than we're giving ourselves an ability to understand. And so I was introduced to Steiner through this book and found his lectures. And basically he was asked by farmers in the 1920s over in Europe that had just started to use conventional agricultural practices. And a lot of that came from the world wars. The munitions and a lot of the pesticides and all of these things were monetized and sold to farmers to increase yields and all of these things. And what they really did was create obesity in plants and start the whole ball that's kind of rolling down the hill to this day.
Wow.
But what he was asked was how do we regenerate the life force of the farm? These farmers were using these artificial materials, and they were getting illnesses in their animals and that they'd never seen before. And they kind of got together and said, Dr. Steiner, please provide some insight on how we can right this wrong. And what he came up with was these 8 lectures called the agriculture course. Mm-hmm. So it was actually the very first reaction to conventional chemical farming, even before organics. And it was, I suffice it to say, it was more than people could bite off at the time, because we were really coming out of the age where these things happened unconsciously. You really listened to the farm in a way that we've kind of completely undermined with conventional agriculture. And so he offered these lectures, and things like Sow by the Moon are kind of the remnant of that, if you will. And what I see.
Oh, shoot.
Did we lose him? I wanted to tell you about this really powerful and unique product called the Q Laser. Did you know there's over 2,500 peer-reviewed clinical research studies showing the benefits of low-level laser therapy on the body? We had Dr. Larry Lytle on episode 165 talking all about it. Dr. Lytle, what is the Q Laser?
The Q Laser is a light-delivering device, handheld, rechargeable, that is for lay people and professionals, that works at the cell level of the body to restore energy. Since the body is all composed of cells and the cells are composed of atoms, it's good for any and everything in the body. It is especially beneficial for injuries. It will reduce swelling and inflammation before your eyes. Literally, you can have a sprained ankle and fly the laser, and within 30 minutes you can see that the swelling in the ankle has been reduced. Since all disease is inflammatory, you can assume that same process is working if you have some type of intestinal problem. We have pictures of using a heat instrument to diagnose the intestinal inflammation. We can show that intestinal inflammation is pretty much gone within 3 minutes using the Q1000 laser. It's the number one tool in your medicine cabinet. I have a saying, never leave home without your laser. I have had 3 serious burns, and each time I had my laser with me, I applied the laser immediately after I had the burn. I never even blistered.
Kate and I don't want to be without ours. We've worked out a special deal with Dr. Lytle for all of our listeners. If you'd like to learn more about how the Q Laser can dramatically improve your health, go to extremehealthradio.com/laser. Did you know that conventional dog food contains antibiotics, herbicides, pesticides, ground up carcasses from roadkill subjected to high heat processing, artificial colors, chemical preservatives, way too many carbohydrates, genetically modified corn syrups, indigestible grains, and a lack of moisture content in the dry kibble? Obviously, this can lead to health conditions like diabetes, itchy skin, teeth and gum problems, liver damage, obesity, behavioral issues, pancreatic problems, and even cancer. That's why we recommend the BARF diet, which is the biologically appropriate raw food diet from Barf World. Their unprocessed raw meats contain bone, organ meats, vitamins, and minerals that are loaded with enzymes. Barf World founder Robert Mueller explains more.
Sure, I don't have to convince you on the damage that's caused by high heat to food. So as a result, we see many skin disorders, a lot of arthritis, obesity, heart disease, cancers. I mean, it's just rampant. The vet clinics are just full of these conditions. And basically a large percentage of the commercial pet food that's is made up of the human industry leftovers. And the pet food industry makes use of this waste product. And in addition to that, we are subjected to the products coming out of the rendering plants. Garbage in, garbage out. If you feed garbage to your dog, you're going to end up with garbage health. You know, if you put the right gas in, your engine runs smoother and lasts longer. So if you put the right fuel in the tank, you're going to get the right output. Garbage in, garbage out.
We've seen an immense difference with our dog Maggie being on this diet. Give your dog the gift of health today by going to extremehealthradio.com/barf or go to our store. That's extremehealthradio.com/barf to learn even more. Hey, Evan. Whoa,
internet connection problem. There's a problem with the internet connection between you two. Hold on while we try to get the call back. So you're saying that sold something by the moon?
Yeah.
Evan Folds is offline. That's
I find that it's really strange. I just went away for a 4-day solo retreat and got back last night, but there's a few things that I feel like
there's something to it, huh?
Well, I kept hearing about the waning and waxing of the moon, and it's just so funny in our culture, especially in my own, I'm not speaking for everyone, but in my own circle of family, and we didn't give a second thought to the moon or the seasons or like what it meant for crops or the magnetism of the pull of things. I mean, it's pretty stark.
It's weird how disconnected we are.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Maybe that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
We're really disconnected from life. From
the way life works. It's really weird. I don't know what that is.
Like why did we grow up as kids and not have this innate? Maybe you did more, but I didn't. I never looked up at the sky and thought, wonder what the moon does. I wonder what it pulls. I wonder if it affects people. I wonder, waning and waxing. Never even heard those terms. First time.
Well, they talk about doing like parasite cleanses only on the waxing moon.
See?
Because parasites are affected somehow by the moon.
And don't they go crazy on like a full moon or something like that when they apparently breed or go crazy in your body? And that's why people do some strange things is a theory.
It's bizarre though too, because women have monthly cycles and there's, there's an obvious connection between the cycles of life and all of that, and the moon and the stars and the sun, regardless of what you think those things are.
Right.
There's some sort of connection that we're all just disconnected from life.
Right.
We're inside all day on computers. I mean, no wonder why we just can't figure out. A guy like Steiner seems so crazy. Really, he's probably just reminding us of stuff we should be thinking about.
All the generations past that knew this stuff. I mean, you think about
weird?
Our forefathers and, from the beginning of time, it's like they mapped out this stuff. They knew, they supposedly knew how the pull and the gravitational forces and the ley lines and the constellations. I mean, that was their well-being and survival mode. Like
they lived in it.
But to figure out that stuff, like I just always think on such a simple level, who was the first person to look up and start to like figure this out? To come up with a science or a pattern or some sort of an observation to even make sense of all this crazy information thrown at you.
It's unbelievable.
It's wild.
It's really crazy.
You know what was cool? Oh, sorry. Are you still trying him?
I'm still trying him. So just keep going.
On my solo retreat, it was really amazing because you get out of the rat race of the everyday, and I was able to sit outside in a vineyard an orchard, and eat my lunch one day, I think 2 days ago, in the middle of this 26-acre orange orchard. And it was really cool to observe just the path of life. It was, what the lizards did and watching their patterns, the woodpeckers up in the tree, birds chasing each other from the treetops, squirrels scaling the oak trees and coming back down and like gathering something like an acorn and taking it back up the tree. And the way that the water, I sat by this rippling brook, the way the water moved around in like this life force, it was like, I just feel like we don't live in an area where we're connected with nature very much. But I thought just a 20-minute time set aside to observe how nature works. It blew my mind because I thought, wow, look at that lizard. He's trying to accomplish this, it seemed. Or this bee isn't just flying around trying to bug people. Like we see a bee on the street, we bat it away. We're like, it's in my way. It's going to sting me. But I'm watching it amongst the lavender plants and watching what it's doing. And it's serving such a purpose. And I feel like all our forefathers and the generations before us were focused on was observing these things and noting them and passing it on so that the next generation could take the torch and progress.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like somebody at one point had to sit and like actually observe this stuff. And I just think we're so in general disconnected from this stuff. So
I think
that's my tangent.
No, I think it's awesome because this is how progress happens. This is how civilizations and cultures move and progress beyond their current level of understanding. And when you sit around, like Walden in his book, what was that book called?
Is that Walden's Pond or one of those?
Yeah, something like that. It wasn't civil disobedience, but, just sitting and observing nature and looking at what's going on. And if you really think about what's actually happening in nature, it's enough to just blow your mind because you're thinking of all these things that are all, happening at one time. Sap in the tree is going
spiraling
upwards, up.
Like Evan was
gravity.
Like Evan was saying though, it's funny that we have all this backing us and all this knowledge and everything to give us these answers. And yet man came along at some point, thought they could do it better or had another plan and ruined it. And now it's like, thank God for people like Evan that kind of come back and bring it back home. They're trying to like, let's go to what we knew used to work before we got in our own way.
So what is it about? Because when I go out in nature or I take Maggie for a walk, there are times when I'll look at like a flower there and I'll just stand there and look at it, or I'll look at something and I'll just be blown away at the symmetry of the flower, and the flower doesn't seem to have a consciousness, but it's just there, and it doesn't have any ego, but it's there for the benefit of what, really?
Yeah, like what is its purpose?
What is its purpose? But it definitely knows what its purpose is, and so I'll just look sometimes and just be blown away at this most simple things that's going on in nature. Like a lizard running around or a rabbit running around, I'll see, and you can just imagine what it would be like to be the rabbit and get into that consciousness and all the things that it needs to do to live and survive and where it needs to go and all of these things that are going on. But then sometimes I'll just walk Maggie and I'll just be completely unaware of all of the insane amounts of incredible awesomeness that is right outside all of our doors, and we just take it all for granted. What is it that causes sometimes me to look at things in awe and wonder and mystery, and sometimes I just don't think about it at all?
I think I know what you mean. I feel like my answer to that question is I'm too much in my head on certain time and certain days and walks and getaways. I'm in my head, and that's the problem. It's somehow being in a different space, and I know what you mean. I'm trying to figure out why you're in that different space that you're able to observe. Because like the other day I was looking at some kind of like a little ferny plant growing up through a crack in the sidewalk, and it was growing in a spiral sequence, like a Fibonacci type thing.
Oh, no way.
And I thought, I was like I was blown away thinking this thing actually grew. It propelled itself up, like you just said, the sap from the tree, through a piece of concrete.
Now that's just incredible.
And then spiralized. Something within it knew it was to create and grow in this sequence, this spiralization to come up. And it was in this perfect, like, round formation with longer leaves and then smaller leaves. And it was just this work of art coming out of a crack in the sidewalk. And I thought the same thing. Why some days am I just so appreciative of this stuff? And other days I'm just focused on, hey, there's a dog up there. I got to make sure that Maggie doesn't go crazy on it. It's like I'm too in my head. So, how do we return from the head to the heart space more and live out of that? I think it's just a daily practice of awareness, really. Mindfulness, maybe.
Right.
It's a challenge, though, isn't it?
It is.
That's why getaways are so important, to remind you that outside of the concrete jungle is the real world.
The real world,
waiting to be discovered, and like a return to the simple things of how nature works.
It's weird because the concrete jungle is such a bizarre thing. Because if you think about it, it's like a piece of bread that's just sitting there, and the bread is itself, like the earth. It just is. But then, like you put on mayonnaise or ketchup or something, or a slab of sliced deli meat or something, and you start stacking all these things on top of the existing bread. And the more things you stack on top of that, and the more you live in those layers of whatever that is, the more disconnected you get from the actual earth itself, because you have no connection, either physically or anything, to the earth. And so it's like because if you think about like all the concrete and the asphalt and the cement and the buildings and the roads and all this stuff, we're just piling on top of the existing crust of the earth.
Right.
And then all the, 40-story office buildings on top of that. And we live in this area above the earth, and we're not connected. It's so bizarre.
That's funny, but I'm totally joking and saying this, but it's true. It's like you're not living on the earth anymore. You're living on a sandwich. Like that's what it becomes. It becomes a whole different.
All these layers, right?
It becomes a different substance. It's not even just the crust. It's not the earth anymore. It's an earth piled with, like you said, a bunch of toppings, and it becomes a whole different entity.
Mm-hmm. And then we're also. I think we have Evan back, and then we're also.
We have him?
I think we have him back.
Yeah, guys, I'm so sorry. We're having a storm over here, and it looks like our internet took a hiccup. So.
Yeah, no worries.
Oh, we're stoked.
Yeah, we're just talking about how disconnected we all are, because we're just talking about how when you were, cut off there, you were talking about the waxing and the waning moons and things, and Kate and I were just discussing how interesting it is that we live in our culture and in our life, and we don't even think about the waxing and the waning moon. We don't think about seasons or any of that.
People
stuff.
don't even know those terms. I mean, we don't give it much thought. It's really sad.
It is. There's a calendar. It's called the Stella Natura, and you can find it at stellanatura.com.
Stella Natura.
Yeah, it actually is. It was the work of Maria Thun, who's basically spent her life planting seeds every day and documenting the results of what type of seeds are grown when. And it gives you information such as, don't plant on these days, or harvest root vegetables on these days, or plant flowers on these days. I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of details you can get out of it. But it begins to explain why the tomato crop was great this year and it was horrible last year. Did you pay attention to when you planted it? So there's so many different levels of understandings that we can enter into when we pay attention to them.
Yeah, we were kind of talking about that when we were separated there for a little bit, of just, it's so sad. It's amazing the work you're doing, because it's like all the generations leading up to this moment had given us, like you said, just with the Stella Natura thing, so many answers. And it's so sad that we go ahead and we ruin it, and then we try to return to it. It's like...
It is. And it's, it can be frustrating, and I've had many share of frustration. But what gives me a lot of perspective is, and I'll bring it back to Steiner, because he's been a great influence on me, but it gives you a really good framework that's not out of the box. There's a term called, he used the words Lucifer and Ahriman. And Lucifer not in the religious context, but in the sense that, in prehistory, the human consciousness was of gnosis. There was telepathic understandings. And that's a bit far out, but bringing it into the current realm, what he projected was the influence of what's called Ahriman, and it's a spiritual being, if you will. Maybe that's not the right term, but it essentially says that what's happening on Earth should happen on Earth, that everyone went through a complete incarnation of their lifetime in previous generations, completely disconnected from the spiritual world, and that our challenge in the times coming towards us are to reconnect with that consciously. Where, the farmer 200 years ago planted by the moon because he got the best results, and he was directly connected with those things in an unconscious way. Mm-hmm. And we've come through kind of the industrialization of reality and, kind of hit the wall there, so to speak. And what we're doing is having conversations like this one that invite us into kind of a super sensible way of understanding our influence and our power, really, Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to me, not that it's a documentation of what is happening, but that there is a framework to understand that what's happening should be happening. And our responsibility is to recognize it and react to it. And that's becoming easier, at least in my experience, on a daily basis with the people that I talk with.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's fascinating too that, I think it's consuming food fresh from a garden, it has got to be one of the most, I guess, influential ways that man is able to interact with planet Earth. Maybe aside from breathing or something like that, but you're actually consuming the food that comes up from the earth. And so Steiner, with all of his work, is saying there's so much more going on than any of us ever will even realize of what's going on in the forests and the wilderness and the earth and these types of etheric energies. Yeah. So when we put intention into growing our food, which is what you're talking about with the Vortex Brewer and the compost tea and stuff, this directly affects our interaction with planet Earth, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And just, again, housekeeping, we call the Vortex Brewer the Microbe Maker now. It takes a little practice.
Oh, that's right.
Sorry.
Microbe Brewer, right.
But yeah, I think your point is so relevant because, really, when I first read the agriculture course in the preface, Steiner was asked, you spend so much time trying to instill these spiritual truths in people and for people and with people, and people don't take you up on it. That must be frustrating. Why is that? And his answer was, it's a matter of nutrition, that food no longer contains the forces people need to carry their will into action. And it gives me the chills saying that every single time, because that's, for me, is that we're so far away from our food, we don't know what it is, literally and figuratively. And that the life force, which is a good kind of catch-all term for what you were describing, is absent from our food. And if you really challenge yourself, name something in your daily diet that's of potency and consistency that was harvested within 15 minutes of you ingesting it. And it doesn't happen, And that begins to talk about the relevance of a raw food diet, but even more so things like wheatgrass, where, you're drinking it within a couple of minutes of harvesting the grass and juicing it, and it's alive. And Western science would go in and rip it all apart and say, oh, it's got the highest chlorophyll content of any green vegetable, this, that, and the other. But they can't see the forest for the trees, And we're trying to find the ingredient that carries out the A to B result. And there's actually a word for it in wheatgrass. It's called the grass juice factor. And the concept is that there's not one single component of the wheatgrass that is therapeutic, but it's the synergy of how it all works together in a living form. And it's unquantifiable, which gets back to your point a minute ago. You can't go into a doctor's office and say, look, stop prescribing all these pills and just give people wheatgrass. But I mean, and I don't say this lightly, we grow wheatgrass commercially for 6-8 years now. And we've got people that have cured their cancer, that fibromyalgia, on down the list. And I'm not, I need to be responsible with that. I'm not a doctor and I can't go shouting from the mountaintops, which maybe I'm doing right now about that. But, because, people say, well, you're telling people not to do the things that Western science has figured out and how to manage our symptoms. And I'm not going there. The point is that a doctor is not trained to articulate that. And that really, I imagine you guys spend a lot of time talking about that in your program is, people that have kind of taken things into their own hands and proof of concept beyond what the textbook says. Because our doctors don't go to nutrition school. They're trained to manage symptoms, and we need them. Blessed doctors. I love many of them. It's not I'm not criticizing that, but there's so much more than meets the eye, and that can be measured, and it's fascinating in and of itself.
Yeah, I suspect that in a couple hundred years or 5,000 years or something like that, there's going to be scientific testing that they're going to be able to measure so much more of what's going on in fruit. Because when you pick a peach off a tree and you eat it, or maybe you eat the peach while it's still connected to the tree, I'm sure there's something that's going to be, because minerals were only recently discovered, right?
The minerals?
Yeah, just minerals themselves.
Yeah, relatively so. Everything was recently discovered.
It's crazy. I think that we're going to be...
the last 100 years, it's a drop in the bucket.
I know. Yeah, I think there's so much more. There's probably just 1% of what's really going on and with food, and I think that there's going to be so much more that's going to be eventually be discovered through scientific testing, just like minerals, which is only a couple hundred years ago, or 100 yeyears ago. There's just so much going on.
It really is. And the sophistication of being able to measure this stuff, it already exists. The problem, which is really interesting and a personal fascination of mine, is because I was trained in the scientific method coming through school. And in a sense, we all were. That's where modern science came from. So it's kind of that argument of like, we couldn't have done it differently. We had to figure out the analytics before we could apply the spirituality in a certain way of looking at it. But if you look into sensitive chromatography, it's a method of measuring life force. So you could take a food or let's say a soil sample that was biodynamic, and it would be expressed with beautiful colors and very vivid construct. And then you take a soil that was conventionally grown, and it's very dull. There's no influence of color. And if you asked 100 people, which one do you want your soil to be? 100 would choose the expressive variable. But the problem is, if you do the chromatograph again, it doesn't look the same. So that replicability that is bound by the scientific method, the hypothesis, the theory, and then the law, it only becomes the law if it's replicable by everyone every time. And that's not how nature works. It works in chaos and spirals, not data points and straight lines. Mm-hmm. So this construct that we are coming from that allows us to call things true and call them science is not capable of addressing the qualitative value of things. Mm-hmm. And that's a pretty ingrained and entrenched worldview that is really difficult for people to step outside of. I mean, you could take that with water as well. Water is not just wet. It is so much more. It's so much more dynamic than we give it credit. And it's the simplest and most profound substance in our life, mysterious substance, I would say. There's a guy named Dr. Gerald Pollack who's doing research in Washington that in his book, The Fourth Phase of Water, another good one for people to look into this kind of stuff, is, basically in the 50s, the Russians figured out the anomalous aspect of water, and in the 70s, the Russians did, and their scientists spent lifetimes documenting it. But when you send the paper, once the result is finalized, to like a Nature publication or something like that to be peer reviewed, they send out a team of researchers to your lab to replicate it. And what they do is to perform the same experiment, make sure that they can do it, again, the scientific method replicability. And when they perform the studies of water in capillary tubes that picks up silica from the glass, that's viewed as a contaminant. So therefore, you can't have a controlled experiment and the whole thing's thrown out the door.
So it's almost kind of like the quantum, So it's sort of similar to the quantum mechanics model, where it knows what you're trying to do. The water's conscious and has an awareness of what's trying to be done to it.
Yeah, I mean that it's difficult to. There's a limitation of language, that has to be acknowledged. But when you say water remembers things, well, it's maybe not cognitively, but that's the whole realm of homeopathy is based off of. Is water. I like to look at water as kind of like Victor Schauberger called it the blood of the earth, And if you think about, like in space, if we're having a conversation, you can't hear me because there's no atmosphere for the sound waves to travel through. Well, on Earth, water is the medium that the subtle energies or the life force that we've been talking about communicates through. So it's not that you just become dehydrated. It's that your body isn't capable of communicating with itself. And that's why a river meanders. When you implode water, like in the Microbe Maker, when you allow the water to go through the drain, you're creating an implosive moment. And that was basically the life of Schauberger's work, was the discovery of the regenerative abilities of implosive energies. So when you treat water with the right form or frequency, there's different ways to the same place, you can create a molecular structure that makes it most conducive to communicating these energies. And it's fascinating because it really unlocks a qualitative aspect of water that's really not referenced. We got one word for it. How do we even talk about it?
I know, it's fascinating. Like you said, it's the most mysterious and least understood substance on the planet, yet we all need it to survive, and we know nothing really about it.
Yeah, it's everywhere. It's in our face all day, literally.
So tell people about, I know that people are probably listening to, and I know that you are on a tight time schedule, so I want people to get some actionable stuff here. Tell people about the Vortex brewer is now called the Microbe Maker, right?
Right.
And how can people use this in their home gardens?
Yeah, well, the primary application for the Microbe Maker is to make compost tea, which is the act of growing soil microbes to concentrations that the compost pile or the soil could never accomplish. It allows you to play catch up. And if you think of microbes like construction workers, our job as the contractor is kind of to bring them to the job site as often and as concentrated as possible so that they can build the neighborhood. When the neighborhood is built, the soil works for you. And you kind of getting the human out of the way, if you will. So the act of using the Microbe Maker to brew tea is accomplished by dissolving oxygen in the water through the implosion, which is what's happening in a river. You don't have to aerate a river for fish to breathe the way you would in an aquarium, for example. So the Microbe Maker is kind of the pinnacle of being able to dissolve oxygen and structure water, and it really treats water as a primary nutrient. But you can also, it's more of a commercial unit. You'd have to be a very intentioned gardener, in my opinion, to buy a Microbe Maker commercial unit. We sell most of them to farmers and to lawn care companies and to nurseries and garden centers that want to brew compost tea and sell it. We have a process called perpetual brewing that allows stores to have tea all day, every day, as opposed to batch brewing, which is what the average homeowner might do, where they brew it up to use it all and then they do it again a week later. But you can brew compost tea in a 5-gallon bucket. We've got a product called Compost Tea in a Bucket that comes with our recipe ingredients, an air pump, tubing, and an air stone mechanism that aerates water, not unlike an aquarium for fish. It's actually the same setup, really. If you've had an aquarium, you've brewed compost tea unconsciously. So you're just doing it with the intention of growing microbes. So when you add compost, really high-quality compost, we call it earth compound, to the aerated water, the microbes can breathe. And then you feed them with organic fertilizers, molasses, fish, kelp, earth kelp, and earth syrup are our food sources. And you put that together, and in the presence of oxygen and food source, the microbes grow to extraordinary concentrations. I think one bacteria could be 300 million more in the matter of a day.
300 million?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So that sound, I know I'm learning as I go, obviously. We haven't had any land, actual dirt to deal with, but we're going to very soon when we make a move. This sounds really complex and complicated for a beginner. Is it really overwhelming to someone who doesn't know anything about this in the beginning?
Fair association. It might be somewhat the way I talk about it, but in the end, it's very simple. It's, think about the forest. The trees don't eat the leaves. They eat what the microbes make out of it. Microbes make plant food. People don't, right?
Right.
That is composting right there. Well, all we do is harness that natural process for human benefit by concentrating it into a pile, maybe paying attention to what we put in, value added or not. And the microbes do the work. So you've concentrated that natural process. What compost tea does is just concentrate the compost pile. So you're just taking orders of magnitude to grow more soil microbes. And, try drinking a beer without yeast. Right. I mean, it defines what it is. And it's the same way like baking bread without yeast or kombucha without the mother, Right. The soil is defined by the soil food web, it's called, the organisms that are living there. And if you think about it from the perspective of the ocean, in the soil food web, you have bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and nematodes. Those are called trophic levels or life levels. They live off of each other. And so what you're doing is if you compare that to the ocean, you would have the plankton to the shark, So the bacteria is kind of the plankton and the nematodes are kind of like the sharks.
Okay.
And the idea is it'd be like, setting up a soil food web without the source of a diverse biological product, or mother, if you will. Mm-hmm. It'd be a bit like trying to invent the ocean out of, with what you have around you, And in our landscapes, when you develop property, you basically start over. Microbes don't jump over the fence. And, you take 2 feet of soil off or bring in cheap fill to level the land. And you're basically spinning your wheels. And even if you're taking an organic approach, you can't fertilize soil into health. You can fertilize soil and grow plants in a more premium way than conventional fertilizer. But the real magic is when you're using organic fertilizers, not to feed the plant, but to feed the soil. So organic gardening is about feeding microbes, but the microbes have to be there to be fed. And that's what most people miss. So that's what compost tea lets you account for.
Okay, that makes sense because I remember Justin and I went, what was that, a couple of years ago to like an Earth Day celebration thing. And there was all these kinds of things you could experience. But one of them was learning how to do compost in a bucket. And we got all these worms and you start out and they tell you what to put in. I'm not kidding. We left the bucket alone for like a year and didn't even want to deal with it because it was like we didn't have a yard to like work it. And we opened that thing. It was so horrible after like a year and everything was just like, it didn't do anything. There was no worms. They were all dead. Like somehow we failed. And I always think it was such a poor experience for me with this composting thing. I thought the person who's kind of like a black thumb at composting, I didn't even know that could exist. I always thought you get compost, you throw it in a thing, you let the worms do their deal. But I actually felt like I failed. So when we talk about this compost tea, I'm like, okay, there has to be a better way to like go about this.
Yeah. Right. And in some respects, it simplifies it because there's a certain level of responsibility when you compost. You have to balance the carbon to nitrogen ratio. You have to actually add the beneficial microbes that accomplish it to begin with.
You can't just put a lid on it and hope the worms do their thing.
Well, you can on some level.
On some level,
if you literally left it for a year, the worms might have run out of food. No telling what happened there.
Right.
But generally, worms kind of simplify because it's interesting. Worms have soil microbes in their gut. The reason worm castings, worm manure is so valuable is because soil microbes made it. Now, I'll say soil microbes to differentiate it from things like manure, like cow manure, or our manure for that matter. That's made by anaerobic microbes without oxygen in a gut, and it's totally different biological populations there. So people that are using cow manure to regenerate land aren't harming anything, but they're essentially mulching and fertilizing. They're not inoculating the soil with the microbes that make soil what it is. So if the soil is dead to begin with, which typically it would be on a chemically treated farm or on a landscape that was developed, the manure is really no better than fertilizer. It's just free most of the time, So the real key is to use the manure, but source a mother of soil microbes that you can spray out there very easily, or just in a watering can for that matter. And those microbes then turn that manure into plant food. And that's really where the value of this comes from. Then you don't have to fertilize. You don't have to kill all your problems. It does it for you. So, that doesn't sound like the best experience, but in the end, worms do have in their gut what they can. They don't necessarily want to eat the piece of paper you put in there. They want to eat what's eating the piece of paper, if that makes sense.
That makes sense.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the idea of inoculating with soil microbes is you make the environment more conducive to worms. And the flip side of that is people want to buy worms and throw them in their garden. Nothing wrong with that. But if your soil is not alive with soil microbes, the worms are going somewhere else. So they're kind of an indicator. If you use and get the plankton right, all the fish come,
Right.
Okay. So it sounds So it sounds like the microbes are where it's at. And do you sell the microbes or how do people get a hold of these things?
Yeah. You can go to microbemakers.com, and if you don't have any material at all, compost tea in a bucket will get you started. If you have a little brewing kit or like an aquarium setup that you wanted to use, you just look for compost tea in a box. That's our recipe ingredients. And it comes with earth compound, earth tonic, earth syrup, and earth kelp. Earth compound is where the microbes come from. It's the biological source. Earth tonic is kind of an enzyme catalyst. It's a seawater product that, microbes don't have a mouth. They make enzymes, kind of like we're used to thinking in our saliva and in our gut. So the enzyme breaks down the organic matter into plant food or manure, depending on where you're at in the gut or in the soil. So the earth tonic is kind of the toolkit, and then earth syrup and earth kelp are the food sources. And when you put all that together in an aerated water solution, you grow microbes beyond the capacity of nature, and you can really play catch up, like I said. And that would be what you would pour on your compost pile just once, really, to start it, to activate it. The heat you get from composting is the activity of the microbes, and the quality of it is determined by the diversity of the microbes present.
Okay, so how long would it if someone has a little compost pile in their backyard and they have just a regular sized backyard with a few fruit trees and maybe some vegetables and things, how long would that last, all that stuff you're talking about on their compost pile? Yeah, good question. The ideal scenario is you're making your own compost to brew your own compost tea. That's our method of consulting. Our preference is really not to connect people to our economy and you have to stay there. We really try to empower people to do this themselves, and there's a lot of people that just don't have the time and don't want to. Mm-hmm. So there's a place for all of it. But to your question, with our compost tea is a bit of a loaded word because it's not defined in any rigid way. It's kind of like compost. It's like every home is going to make a different recipe because you got a different waste stream. Mm-hmm. So like in compost tea, I talk about it from our recipe perspective. We would use a gallon per 500 square feet. So the average lawn, let's say in a landscape, is maybe 3,000 square feet. With beds, it's probably more like 5,000. So if you brewed up 5 gallons a week in a bucket and diluted it into enough water that would allow you to reach the landscape and did that at least once a month, I would say, ideally once a week, somewhere in there, the consistency of that application is going to allow the microbes to grow the soil into the capacity to do the work for you. It's very cost effective to do. It's costs about $1.50 a gallon at a really small bundle of our ingredients to brew a gallon, and it'd cover 500 square feet. That's awesome. So if people want to learn more and consult, do you guys do any consulting with people?
Yeah, we do. We do a lot of consulting from anywhere from a backyard gardener. We kind of call our retail business kind of our garden consultant, and our farming consultant comes through my wholesale company, Progressive Farms. But we do it from that bioenergetic perspective, and you can go to our website microbemakers.com and read more about this in the Learn More section. But essentially, it's that living systems have a physical, mineral, biological, and energetic capacity. And if you think about conventional growing, it's physical and it's mineral. You plow, you aerate, and you fertilize. The organic gardening begins to bring in the biological component, but both methods of farming completely ignore the energetic component. And the energetic component is really the house of biodynamic agriculture. Steiner brought what he did forward, but he didn't discuss soil testing and microbial diversity and soil structure. Mm-hmm. He wasn't asked to either. So what I found in my putting this out in the world is that, just to tell a conventional farmer, all you got to do is spray these energies around your farm and everything will fix itself. Doesn't work, because one, they're set at a really low level of fertility, but two, it's a little bit more than they can chew to start. So, we do a soil testing process called soil testing prescription. We have the microbial diversity. We work with water and the bioenergetic techniques and the exchange capacity in the soil. And if you focus on that whole platform, it really brings the whole system into working for you rather than, you having to do all of the lifting.
So now,
absolutely.
Some of the benefits to this are going to be, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're going to bring more minerals and vitamins and nutrition to the soil. So, for example, if like a tomato is able to uptake 56 minerals, because tell me where I go wrong, but in my understanding, each piece of fruit or vegetable is able to uptake a specific predetermined set amount of minerals. So, if a tomato is able to uptake 56 minerals, and you get your soils really rocking in your backyard, are you going to be able to have that tomato uptake all those minerals?
Yeah. I mean, there's a point at which you have to call alchemy, mm-hmm. right? Because if you look at, let's say Miracle Grow, there's 5 to 7 elements in it. If you look at a hydroponic nutrient, which is the method of growing plants in water, where the human has to bring total fertility, it's only 17 elements. And you just referenced, the 52 with tomatoes, and it's incidentally grass, like wheatgrass and grass species, can fix all elements, or the most that are known. I don't know the specificity there, but that's why a ruminant, like a cow, can live off of it alone. It's perfect food. Mm-hmm. But again, it's kind of like the microbe conversation. The minerals have to be there to begin with, and that's one of the points of Earth Tonic is it's ocean water. And there's a book called Sea Energy Agriculture by Dr. Maynard Murray, and he did a lot of research in regards to hydroponic nutrients, conventional ones, 17 elements, versus those supplemented with sea minerals. And the results that he got are astounding. So actually delivering these into the ecosystem is so important to begin with, because you have to really come to terms with it's not there automatically. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how we operate, right? We just make assumptions. When we make a compost pile, we just pile the material up, and the assumption is, whether it's conscious or not, is that the organic matter just melts. The process just happens, and it doesn't. It'd be like trying to put the bread ingredients together and assuming the yeast was there. It doesn't work like that, right? So you kind of have to have that level of consciousness to bring it to the situation. But once you've got the situation moving, to your point, let's say mulch mowing in your lawn. People don't do that because it makes thatch, and that suffocates the soil and compaction and all these problems. So they bag their lawn clippings. Well, what if you took all the leaves out of a forest? The whole system shuts down. So we're mining the situation to compensate for the lack of biological diversity and mineral diversity to start with. And we're digging a hole. So once you've got the microbes in the soil and you've got all of the elements there, incidentally, microbes use every single element on the periodic table to make enzymes. If you don't have all elements in your soil or your compost tea or your garden or wherever you are, it's like hiring microbes to build a house and giving them half the tools. Mm-hmm. They just can't do everything they're capable of. And that manifests as disease and pest infestations. And we're chasing that around with all the chemicals, trying to kill the problem away. So, you can see a lot of what we do in our retail, we sell perspective more than we do, a certain product, really. Mm-hmm. Once you've got a proper way of looking at these things, your actions change and you start reinforcing what the living system wants rather than what we think we want. Mm-hmm. And you win. But another little aside, but it's when you talk about the alchemical part, Louis Kervran wrote a book, Biological Transmutation, and he specifically restricted calcium to a chicken, and the chicken still laid an egg every day, and it was a thinner shell and all that. But where'd the calcium come from? Calcium is 10 times higher in worm castings than based on what they eat. So there is an alchemical reality that, again, the further you look, the less you know, that you have to kind of come to terms with and be comfortable with, because it never, not knowing these things doesn't prevent people from eating eggs. It doesn't prevent people from using worm castings, right? I mean, you can still get the value without having ripped it apart to figure it out. So, that's a really fascinating arena to talk in. But a lot of it is just about the perspective and making sure that those components are there. And once they are, it organizes on much higher levels than we're capable of with artificial agriculture. What's
cool about what you're talking about is that it changes, like you said, people you're consulting with people with perspective. And it's cool because when you start realizing that you can treat the soil and just get this soil really, really the pH correct, the calcium, magnesium levels in good proportion and ratio, and you get the microbes in there and you treat the soil. And then all of a sudden you start getting these plants that are just amazing. You don't have to spray it with chemicals to fight off pests and all these things. When you start looking at that, then it starts translating to your own life, because you're like, okay, I can start thinking of my body this way. I don't have to go after all these symptoms with, taking Tylenol or taking something like this for a headache. But you can start treating the soil of your own body, and it sort of translates probably subconsciously over time as you keep doing it. You're thinking like the soil of the actual earth is just like the soil in my gut. The healthier it is, the more I want to take care of my own gut, and then it just translates as just awesome health.
Exactly. The compost pile is the gut of the landscape. The future of medicine is really going to be built on gut health. The gut-brain connection. And I'm sure you guys spend a lot of time talking about, that a lot of the ways that you can kind of build a bridge for people in compost tea is just to think about it like a probiotic for the soil. If you have to get sick and you take an antibiotic, you eat some yogurt when you're done. Not people out of 10 understand that. It's no different what we're talking about here. You just have to articulate that the yogurt microbes are a different set of microbes, gut microbes, if you will, than soil microbes. And that's kind of a nuance that's really profound, because if you're not sourcing those soil microbes, you're really not setting yourself up for the soil to be what it is to begin with. But yeah, the parallels are life. It's a lot simpler than we've made it in all reality. Yeah.
Evan, I have a question, as I know we're coming to an end, but I've been dying to ask your opinion. Have you seen Back to Eden, the film?
I am aware of it. I have not watched it from beginning to end.
I haven't watched it either, and a girl at my work kind of told me about it, and she said that the main concept, I could be wrong on this, but she said it's about, a guy realizing that you can take a bunch of basically other plant matter, trees, chop it, wood chips and things, and make a big layer of mulch on top of a soil, and these trees are just going crazy and stuff. Do you think do you know anything about that, or if there's a lot of truth to that way that he's doing things?
Back to Eden.
What I've seen from him is that it's working very, very well.
Wow.
So I would say absolutely. If it works, it works. The premise of it is, mulching is effective, but if the soil is alive. So
right, because it all goes back to the soil.
Yeah, exactly. So what I'm imagining, again, I haven't really gone all the way through it, and I'm really not in a position to evaluate exactly what he's doing. But what I would assume is that the soil he is working was alive by default, unless he took some effort off camera, maybe to use compost tea. I mean, I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I was wondering if you. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know specifically, but it's a bit like, if I connect with a really, really good intentioned organic farmer or a biodynamic farmer, they really aren't paying attention to the common issues that a conventional farmer is experiencing. They can take it for granted.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I have an assumption that scenario is a bit like that, because if your soil is alive and you're using wood chips in that regard, what you're doing is basically growing a really healthy fungal network in your soil.
Right.
And that is the brain of the garden. It's like, the biggest organism in the world is a fungi. I think it's in the woods in the Pacific Northwest. But that neural network of the soil is what fungi is. And that's the relevance of no-till farming and these kinds of things. So, assuming that guy's soil food web is healthy, I think his method is essentially what we've been talking about. He's using wood chips. You could use something else and have the same level of success, I would suggest. If the soil's alive and was able to digest it, that's how the forest works. And the forest grows trees with no fertilizer. Right?
I'm super eager to watch that that movie because of what my friend had told me about it. I just thought, wow, isn't that true? Like everything we've been talking about. If the soil and the very essence of of life is healthy, you're just going to see flourishing. And I think what Justin nailed it, and you've nailed it too, about like whether it's, your emotional, spiritual, physical body, or whether it's a plant, it's all the same. It depends on what the soil is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it really is. It just needs the materials there that justify what it is. And
absolutely.
That's really profound. I agree.
Exciting.
Well, that's awesome. Thanks, Evan. Sorry for all the technical problems today. Let's do this again sometime. Are you willing to do that?
I would love to do that. This is my favorite thing to do. You guys are great. I really appreciate what you're doing. We need more of it in every way. So if I can contribute in any way, just, let me know. I'll be there with those.
Thank you. Are you ever out in California, by the way?
I'm actually preparing to be, more than I have been. So yeah. I would love to come and see what you guys are up to over there.
Yeah, we are, we've got a third mic in our studio here, and we'd love to do something in studio with you. We're about halfway between LA and San Diego. So if you're ever down here, let me know.
I will certainly drop you a line. Yeah, I'm going to be doing a bit more consulting and traveling and doing some presentations for some conferences and things like that.
Awesome.
So,
that is awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
Yes. Trying to get the word out.
I love it.
You guys offering the platform. It's
awesome.
Really pleasure speaking with you today.
We appreciate what you do too, and if we see you in person, hopefully we'll hide our worm bucket.
Fair enough.
We'll start over.
Yeah.
Awesome,
right on.
Evan. Thanks for being on. I know you got to run out to a meeting here really quickly.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for being on, my friend.
Real pleasure. We'll talk again soon, guys.
Okay,
thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I hope you're enjoying the show so far. I wanted to tell you about this really cool program called the Complete Bone Health Solution Program, put out by Kevin Gianni and Dr. J.E. Williams. It's really awesome. You can check it out at extremehealthradio.com/bones, plural, or you could check it out in our store. But it's really, really an amazing program. It goes into the causes of osteoporosis and bone loss, osteopenia, what causes these conditions. And Dr. J.E. Williams, I think he has like over 30 years of experience in natural medicine, and he's seen over 100,000 patients. So he's got tons of knowledge, and I have the course myself and have gone through it. It's really, really good course. And if you know anyone that has these types of conditions, I would highly suggest that you purchase this or maybe get it for them or have them get it. It's really, really a good program. And he goes into specific protocols and how to treat all kinds of different bone conditions like weak or brittle bones, osteoporosis, bone loss, bone fractures, and how to generally strengthen your bones using diet without taking medication. And so he's got all these protocols for this. So it's really, really a good program, and I highly recommend it. So if you're into this kind of thing, or if you need this kind of information, it's really a wealth of knowledge. It comes in physical or digital format. It's about 2 hours long and comes with transcripts and PDF documents and booklets and all kinds of stuff. So if you go to extremehealthradio.com/bones, or you could look at it in our store, you'll be able to watch a couple videos with Dr. J.E. Williams as just a little bit of an intro to the course. So check it out, extremehealthradio.com/bones. I have to say, I have been absolutely loving this product by Tristan Truscott and Peter Ragnar called Good Morning, Good Evening Qigong. If you want to listen to the interview we did with Tristan, you can go to extremehealthradio.com/127. And Qigong is a great way to de-stress the body. And as you know, there's a huge component to disease caused by stress. And stress is a huge factor in how we live our lives and the amount of energy we have and the amount of vitality we have. And so, Dr. Shade, what do you think about Qigong?
People come to me and they're really sick and they got this blown out neurological system and all this toxicity. And I tell them, you need to do Qigong, Tai Chi. You need to do these things that settle down and restore your neurology, because it puts together all the parts. It puts you back into that state where you can start to detoxify. And so I highly, highly recommend all that.
And what about you, Kit Campbell? What do you think about Qigong? Do you like it as well?
Qigong is amazing. And the reason that I believe it to be amazing is everything here is energy. That is a scientific fact, if there ever is one. So when you're practicing Qigong, you're actually drawing energy into your body. Your intention, whatever your intention is behind any action, will determine the level of energy, type of energy that you absorb into your body. So your intention behind is very important, just like thought. So when you're practicing Qigong, you're actually bringing energy in and you're bringing out the stuff that might be a bit stale. With Tai Chi, it's totally different. The energy runs underneath the skin because it's more of a martial. This is the Chinese understanding, by the way. It's more of a martial art. So Qigong is very, very good for bringing that energy into the body, and just fantastic.
If you're interested in picking up this Qigong course by Tristan Truscott and Peter Ragnar, go to extremehealthradio.com/Qigong. That's QIGONG. And you can learn more about it. There's a great video on that page, and you can learn more about it on that page. And I highly, highly recommend this product. I love it myself, so go ahead and check that out. extremehealthradio.com/Qigong.
Our poor worm bucket.
Our poor worm bucket.
Do you remember?
Yeah, you know what it was? Is we didn't necessarily. We're still on, so we're still recording it live. Do you have a few minutes?
Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah. So we're
to talk about worms. Heck yeah.
Who doesn't have a few minutes to talk about worms? But you know what we did wrong is we put too much, because we were doing a lot of juicing at the time, so we put too much wet pulp in there.
Oh, is that what it was?
With not enough dry matter. And so I think that's what he was talking about with the nitrogen. Because it just got, remember you would open it up and there's 1,000 flies. You would open the
1,000 flies and no worms, and all I wanted was some worms. That was
really bad. Well, we just didn't know what we're doing.
Well, we didn't know, and that's when you got up in the middle to use the restroom. I asked him. I said, basically we what did I say? Something about failing with our worms. Shoot.
Something about our own compost or something?
I asked him, that's what I said. I said, to the average person that might have had a good or a bad experience with this, it seems like a really complicated thing. Mm-hmm. When he's explaining how this works, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, to the average person, that just seems overwhelming. And I asked him, is this something that one with very little knowledge or background in gardening or soil can understand? Mm-hmm. And he said, it might be the way he's explaining it, because he's very scientific and very knowledgeable. And he kind of took credit for that and said, it might be the way I'm talking about it. But, basically to simplify this and put it in layman's terms, it's basically just let's let the soil do what it's supposed to do by giving it, like he said, like a probiotic. Mm-hmm. We can simplify this. It's all on the site. It sounds like there's step by step. Have you spent a lot of time on his site?
I looked at his other sites, and then I was looking through Microbe Makers. Yeah, and that looks really cool. You know what I want to do?
I was on there too.
I want to call, when we move and we have a backyard, I want to call him and do some consulting with him, and because we're going to start growing some stuff, and I think that would be really cool.
How to get it really dialed in. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we have a guest 5790 in the chat room I feel so bad we couldn't get to it because I know he was in a hurry. But this guest says, Kate, could you please ask Evan about my compost heap? It's in a big planter with a hole in the bottom, and it's filled with plant matter. There's no paper in it. How can I start composting, and will it affect my home? It's on a veranda connected to our condo. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of perfect thing that I know he could, as a consultant, very easily answer that and get this person pointed in the right direction. Mm-hmm. But I'm thinking on his site, I'm going to spend some time on it. I've just, during the show, been on it a few times in and out to look at kind of more what he's doing, because I think it's amazing. Mm-hmm. But I thought there has to be, I'm sure, for the average person with a question like that to go onto his site and spend some time poking around. You're going to get some good answers about how to very simply, my worm bucket thing. It's I know, he just explained it in 2 sentences about the nitrogen aspect of it. And so I think anybody who can spend a little bit of time on his site and on YouTube and all this stuff and Googling just how to make that thrive, I'm sure he has all that kind of information on his site for the average person who's starting out.
Yeah, under his site on Learn More, he's got a FAQ and what do microbes do? What is compost tea? Why are soil microbes important? What is the soil food web, which is what he talked about on the show? Mm-hmm. What specific benefits do microbes provide? So all of this is
and the growing products he has, all the compounds and tonics and syrups and kelps and recharge stuff you can buy. I just feel like it's all there. It can't be so complicated. I'm sure that if you kind of break it down, spend a little bit of time on the site, myself personally, I'll feel a lot better about attempting it in my own garden. But I need to learn how to compost more, for sure.
Yeah, we should get that going in the new place, for sure.
Yeah.
I'd really like to get going on that because I like what he said. He said, like, how many people have eaten something within 15 minutes?
Yeah.
You know, and we talk about that all the time, but there's something to that. There's something that's lost when you consume something. Even when you buy organic food in the grocery store, you're still missing. I mean, you can literally water a garden, a commercial garden, or farm with water from the municipal water source that's got homeopathic residues of chemotherapy and that in there, and you can water organic gardens with that, just regular water. And so you're getting all the fluoride, chloramines, and all these things. So the water itself isn't filtered. So you're buying, organic food, and that's great, but it doesn't have the chemicals that are sprayed on conventional food. Mm-hmm. But you're missing out on. You're still missing out. Neither organic or non-organic has all of this stuff that he's doing. Mm-hmm. So the only way you can really control that is to grow your own food to some degree. You know what I mean? And
know exactly what kind of minerals you're throwing into it, so it's going to uptake. Chances are, all of them or a ton of them, right?
I mean, think about how awesome this would be to go out to your garden and to pick your cucumbers, to pick your celery, to pick your apples, to pick your parsley and your romaine lettuce and your spinach, and all that stuff, and pick it grown in soils like this with rock dust and all the different microbes that he's talking about, compost. To pick it, wash it off, right?
And eat it right away.
And eat it or juice it right away in like a Norwalk juicer. I mean, think about the amount of, David Wolf calls it prana or mana, whatever these sort of etheric life force energies are, it's going to contain so much more of that. And if you're going to take the time to juice, you might as well do it right.
Well, we had our rooftop garden, right? We tried so hard. That was so frustrating. For like 2 years, we had these giant boxes on stilts on our patio out there because we don't have any ground. Mm-hmm. And I rocked those. It never rocked, I should say. It never took off, but I tried to rock them for like 2 years. I was out there. You remember? Yeah. I was out there planting seeds. I was so like really into this gardening thing for what the space we had to work with. God
said no.
Well, God definitely said no. I never thought I had a black thumb until I tried to do that organic gardening.
But that's not a fair assessment of black thumb. If we go to our new place and you actually have earth, and you still do that to our food.
Thanks, I'm doing it to our food.
And you still ruin all the food.
And I still kill everything. Hey, in my defense, there was a power line running right over the garden.
No, you're right about that.
There's a power line,
but what I was going to say is that if the same thing happens, then you can say you have a black thumb.
Totally. No,
I think it was just where we were.
I think it's where we were too, and I think that the boxes would it wasn't deep enough, to be honest, to really root, to really have things grow and root. But I mean, I killed our trees. But the problem is, for people who don't know this, I've probably joked about this, but the reality is we have no hose, we have no water supply, to water those vegetables that we had growing in those trees.
So we had to get a big
We would take these buckets and like pass each other in and out the door, just carrying buckets of water. Mm-hmm. And it just became, 2 years of committing to that thing and having it just fail us every time was just so not worth it to me. And we even tried to add minerals to the water and to the soil.
Right.
When I first planted it, I did a bunch of stuff to like really mineralize the soil, and then we'd water with was it Evan's product we had, the bio or something? Charge.
No,
what was that
sure
called?
What it was? Yeah, we got that.
Some kind of really cool tea.
Yeah.
Compost tea, and we put on there, but ours just wasn't gonna work. But anyway, we had like a little season where things grew, and we were able to actually pick a few things from the garden and come in, like you said, and just immediately juice it. Like we had romaine.
Mm-hmm. There's something powerful about that.
There was something so powerful, and it was like all hot and warm in the sun in the spring and summer, and it just felt like we were infused with life. It felt like we were digesting real life, because you go to the store, and even though you're buying organic, you realize it's been picked a long time ago. Uh-huh. It's been stuck on a shipment of a big truck, and it's brought there, and it might sit there for days, and it looks all pretty. Yeah. Who knows? But knowing exactly where it was when I was on the solo retreat, I was in these 26 acres of orange groves, and I don't eat citrus, but I picked an orange and I just had to have one for breakfast the other day. And I thought, wow, I picked it, and within 5 minutes it was in my stomach. Like you said, it was something so magical about
There's something there.
Returning to our food. Returning to our food.
Yeah.
No Frankenfood, like Meridian Grace always says. No more Frankenfood. We want real food. And
right.
I think the only way to really, really have real food is to pick it and consume it within a short amount of time. And I feel like that's where the magic happens.
You know what we should do too is I wonder if you can get like a tarp, not like a greenhouse tarp, but get like some kind of tarp you can put over to protect from like the tire dust from the chemtrails and the exhaust from cars and things like that. But then you're missing, if you do that, you're missing the photosynthesis that coming from the sun.
I wonder if there's a way for someone to create something like that. We always joke about how we call it a biopod or a biodome.
Yeah.
How on windy days we could go down to the beach when the sun's out and yet sit under that thing and you could just bake in it and be warm, like the greenhouse effect.
Right.
But I'm thinking, is there a way for someone to create that where you can still get the process coming through? Maybe not a tarp, but maybe almost like a
clear
dome kind of a.
Yeah, like a clear thing.
I'm sure that exists.
Yeah.
Where you still get the plant thriving and doing its natural thing, but you're covering it from all the unhealthy elements.
I don't know that I could grow all my own food. I mean, I could do anything, I guess. You shouldn't really say you can't, but I don't know if that appeals to me, but I would like to grow a lot of food, a lot of the foods that we eat, especially the stuff we juice, because I think that's the stuff that you really, I mean, I guess eating vegetables too, and I guess it would be cool to grow carrots and celery and things like that you cook.
Yeah.
But then also to juice, it would be nice to grow all the stuff you juice.
Oh.
Is there stuff that we juice? Like, how do you grow ginger?
Ginger's a root.
Can you just, I guess you could just grow that, right, on your garden?
Just try to grow that. I can't believe we're going to have a little bit of earth.
I know, it's just like groundbreaking.
To be able to do, no pun intended. Right. Good one. You funny Friday jokester. No, I'd like to grow things like that and then take it right into the house and juice it or boil it, make tea with it.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah, I'm amped.
That would be really fun.
I feel like having a little bit of peace in a more quiet neighborhood for us and some ground is just going to be life altering. Mm-hmm. And I'm really excited too. I'll throw this in about having lines to dry your clothes on in the sun.
Oh yeah.
I think there's something really beautiful about that. My friend Brett, she dries a lot of her stuff in the sun. Uh-huh. Maggie's snoring. I think she's bored of this conversation. But I feel like you and I have been talking about just this vitamin D and the natural elements hitting your clothes. It infuses it with this love when you wear it. It might be a little crunchier. It's not that really fluffy, just out of the dryer smelling good, but there's something more beautiful about it. It just becomes this earth infused power, kind of like when we, put our rocks and crystals out in the sun to kind of charge them and superpower them. I feel like it really does that with your clothes. And so I don't know. I mean, I encourage anybody, whether they have a small porch like we've been dealing with, to keep trying, because it's hard. Earth seems to be just a much better scenario for people, but people who don't have that, I know all kinds of gardening, rooftop gardens and things can take off when you know what you're doing and you educate yourself. And to be honest, we just haven't educated ourselves enough to make that flourish. So we'll try again.
There's something about being outside, you're connected. There's some sort of ethereal or esoteric or some sort of energetic vibration that's happening when you're outside. And so when you line dry your clothes, it's picking up this force from the earth, from the atmosphere, and it's gathering energy from the sun, and it's putting that in your clothes. And the more time you can spend outside, so if you can't spend all this time outside and you line dry your clothes outside, it's picking up something that we're not able to measure yet, and maybe we'll never be able to measure. And when you put your clothes on, it's touching your skin. So it's picking up something that's happening outside.
Right.
And that's kind of like what we were talking about when we got cut off. We're talking about being, living on all these layers on top of the crust of the earth, and we're so disconnected, living 40 stories up in some apartment building. But in the same way that we're disconnected from the earth, it's like we're disconnected from the universe itself, because, you got all this city lights, and you can't even look up and see the stars or the moon. what do they call it, like city blindness or city,
I know
lights
what you mean.
Blind, that block out all of the, and I don't know if that's by design, but when you can't look up, when you're not connected to the earth and you can't look up and see the vast wonder that is up there, then how are you ever going to be able to understand lunar cycles and what the seasons mean, and doing a spring cleanse or a fall cleanse, or the cycles of a woman's menstruation, or the cycle of birth, eating in season. I mean,
what should be offered, like grocery stores offer things year round, and it isn't like that.
Yeah. These concepts are going to seem crazy to us because we're so disconnected.
Right.
We're sitting inside and we're working. We're sitting in front of computers and we're in a car and we're driving to work, and we're so disconnected from the crust of the earth as well as the atmosphere and the wonder that is. I mean, that's one of the cool things living next to the ocean is you can look out and see. I mean, you don't have to do this with an ocean. You can do it with the forest.
A mountain.
You just look out and you see the wonder. But when you're surrounded by homes and cities and you have no way of getting out and you're disconnected from life and nature, all these concepts are going to seem crazy to me. The fact that there's sun energies that connect with my heart energies and all this kind of stuff is not going to make any sense.
You know what? When Evan was talking, and I think maybe you brought up this point, but he said something about, the scientific papers proving things, and Rudolf Steiner and things like that. And then the more we're growing, the more as a society, and science is proving more about how our food works and how our cells work and how our body, it's proving more, but yeah, we're also so much more confused because we realize we haven't even touched the tip of the iceberg, right?
Right.
But I thought, man, it's so important to teach these scientific results of these experiments at younger and younger ages, to expose children.
What do you mean, expose them to what?
To the experiments and what's going on, so that they might care more, because it's really hard when you produce an experiment with the same results. It's proven scientifically that our food gives energy or life force or whatever. And you try to tell that to a 60-year-old person, they're going to be like, well, I just want to eat my Wonder Bread. That's nice, but I want to eat the food I want to eat because it tastes good. And I feel
all
like
they think about is flavor and taste.
They're just they're more closed off,
right,
no matter what science proves or not, because they're addicted to what they want, and so they might be like, well, that's cool, but big deal. But if you tell a group of kindergartners at a really young age, like, check out when you eat this, show them slides of the water, Emoto's thing about.
Or the, what are those pictures called?
The Carolyn photography?
Carolyn photography.
All that kind of stuff. Like, if you exposed a little kid to that, I can't help but think that their eyes wouldn't just widen with wonder. Like, wow, when they eat an apple, as a second grader, they might think, wow, they get it a little bit. Like, they're eating something that took a long time for a tree to grow so big and for it to uptake these minerals that the soil was good enough to be even able to produce an apple. I mean, I feel like this mystic wonder would return the younger and younger we teach truth of what's really going on to the little people. Because I think, anyone can change, and, a 70-year-old person might be mystified by and just completely excited about,
right,
remineralization of soil or Carolyn photography. But I don't know. I think it's going to take a whole generation starting little that's going to just have this awakening and awareness, and they're going to care about stuff because they see it and it's proven. This is what's happening when you eat Wonder Bread versus this is what's happening when you eat a freshly picked piece of fruit.
I mean, I guess that's what the Waldorf is teaching kids.
That's the coolest.
I mean, think about like,
such a cool name, Waldorf.
Waldorf. Think about when you get food and someone's preparing food for you in the kitchen, and say, it might take them a half an hour to prepare a meal where you cook the vegetables and you saute them and put some spices on them and present it on a plate and all that stuff, right? It might take an hour, but you get presented with that, right? And some would argue that food is denatured because it's been cooked and it's lost enzymes. Others would argue that is better for your digestion and these types of things. There's a lot of argument going on of how the food's presented. But you're talking about a kid with an apple, and you think about okay, the apple is like a gift from God or Mother Nature to us, right? And so you think about if a kid's walking through a neighborhood in 1950, he's just got done at the end of the day playing with his friends, and there's an apple tree that's there, and he goes up and picks that apple. Well, that apple for that apple to become an apple, I mean, think about the seed that had to have been either planted or fell off out of another apple. And then for that to germinate in the soil and to finally break through the crust of the earth and bud and then grow for years and years. And then that tree gets to a point where it's mature. So it starts producing fruit and it produces hundreds of apples and then finally produces the apple that the kid ends up picking. And the kid just thinks, oh, here's an apple. I'm going to eat it.
Of course.
But really, it's like it's taken, 10 years for God or Mother Nature to prepare this apple just for that kid.
Just for that point.
Like God's been working on this every day, or Mother Nature. God's been working on this thing every day so that he knows that kid's going to eat that apple. And he just works on it a little bit every day and presented it to, and then eventually one day the kid comes and takes it and eats it. And so what we do is we wonder bread and we just wonder why we're disconnected. But when you're, you know what I mean? But when you're connected,
I love that. You eat Wonder Bread and you wonder why you're disconnected.
You wonder why your life's not going so hot.
Isn't that true though?
Yeah.
Wonder Bread should make you wonder why you
why you're sick.
Why you're so disconnected.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. If you view it like
a present that God's been working on for 15 years for you.
How can you not feel loved?
Yeah.
Like that apple is just actually just an embodiment of love and you're able to consume that. I think that's beautiful.
I know, right? Because this was a project 15 years in the making.
Right.
And it didn't involve unhappy workers that were pissed off about their job working in a factory.
Right.
It was all done by God.
What's crazy is on my solo retreat the last 4 days, I met a couple people on my way out of town, and both of them were from the area of Santa Barbara, and both of the women sent me totally different situations, sent me away with parting gifts from their home. And it was like avocados, tangerines, oranges, and lemons. Mm-hmm. And I'm driving, and I was to receive that, and it was such a beautiful gift to receive them. I got so excited driving home in the car, but thinking about these fruits and vegetables that were just gifted to me.
Right.
And the first thing I thought is, wow, I'm officially old. I get excited about somebody handing me a piece of fruit or a vegetable.
Yeah.
And then I kind of laughed, thinking it's funny when you're a kid. You're like, that would mean nothing to me, but I appreciate homegrown food so much now.
Man.
But then I had this hit, and it was like God said to me, no, it's not that you're old, it's that you're awake. Nice. You're aware. And that, you could be 2 or you could be 202.
Right.
It's not being old that you value this. It's like when you have an awakening, oh my gosh, it's like you couldn't be given a better gift. Mm-hmm. I felt so loved in that moment. I did. I felt like that.
Because how they took care of their food in their garden.
Oh, and how long it takes to grow an avocado. I mean, we did an experiment one time with an avocado pit when I was a kid, and you put the toothpicks in the side and you put it in a mason jar and it starts to grow these roots.
It takes forever.
Yeah, and then if you... Doesn't it take 10 years to have a mature tree or something?
Yeah, it's
like that?
6 years, and then it's mature enough to plant in the ground, but then you're still not getting avocados.
You're not. Yeah, it's not totally fruit bearing for a while. And I thought, wow, to me, that is just. They gave me love. They picked love straight off a tree, and it just went straight into my soul. That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
And I really was super excited. That was the most beautiful thing. And, I didn't have any extra money to blow on this trip. And so, coming down the hill, I was like, oh, I wish I could go buy some honey and some marmalade. And this is before I met up with my friends, and so it's like I left with this free gift of love. And
why do you appreciate that now and not, because you think about your family members and my family members, they would not get this concept. So my family is a little bit more awake than yours, but still, compared to the average person walking around working in a business suit and concerned with stock prices, they're way more awake, but they still wouldn't get the how amazing it is to get and be so connected that way. So why is it that you are able, and you and I are both able to recognize that? It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
Something happened along the way. Maybe we started eating better and our consciousness and our mind expanded or something, or something happened along the way to make us aware of all this stuff.
Yeah. I don't know.
I think
it's an awakening, though. It really has happened in some people and other people not, and other people will die that way. They'll die completely asleep.
And they just won't know. Mm-mm. And it's amazing, too, that when you think about all of this stuff, when you look into the work of Rudolf Steiner and you see all the things he talks about, and he talks about the heart not being a pump, and this was in the late 1800s, and talks about the Fibonacci sequence and the spiralizing of water to move against gravity, and you start realizing that the earth and the soil and the forest doesn't act like we think it acts. It acts completely separate. And we have no idea what's going on. And
it's its own universe.
It's its own universe.
Own ecosystem.
And when you step into the world of mystery and wonder and awe, and you start looking at all the things, we know some of what's going on. But we don't know 99% of what's really going on. And even Rudolf Steiner didn't know what was going on. And he knew a million times more than what we know. And you step into that world and then you see that wow, God gave me an apple or an avocado, or if you hunt your food and you're like the Indians and you're connected to the thing that you kill in the cycle of life, there's something that happens that you start realizing wow, I don't know what's going on here. I don't know who I am. I don't know how I'm connected to all this stuff, but man, am I just blessed to be a part of the cycle of all of it. And you start living in that world of wonder and mystery. You can't really go back to eating Wonder Bread and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and think that that's anything that's going to help you.
Wonder Bread is anything but wonder inspiring or inducing.
I know, right?
Yeah. Well,
that's probably why those people continue to live in a closed off world with a closed mind, because they just eat that stuff and they have no ability to open their mind further.
Ziggy in the chat room, so cool. And he says, perfect. I received a large bag of lemons we picked off her tree as a tip. I was so excited. Plus the fact that that it would have cost me around $30 for them at the farmer's market. Nice. I have to say, I agree, because we have a neighbor, Robert, down the street who's amazing, and he has a lemon tree, and he'll flag us down on the middle of our Maggie walks and have these giant bags of lemons for us. And yeah, not only am I appreciative that they're homegrown and they're organic, and he doesn't even eat them, which is so funny to me. He doesn't eat them at all, so we just get to reap the benefits of it. Yeah. But every time I'm gifted that, I will count how many lemons there are, and in the grocery store, an organic lemon's $1.50 a lemon. Wow. So I'm always adding up, this is a monetary gift as well. Because we juice lemons like crazy. We go through one or two a day,
Easy.
And just what a gift. So Ziggy, I hear you in the chat room. It is to me, that is just such a blessing, and my soul feels so excited when I receive a fruit item or a vegetable.
I know, right?
As a gift. It's just, I don't know. I can't wait to get our own garden growing and treat it right and be able to gift some of the garden stuff out to our neighbors. And I'm amped.
I got to figure out how to not have food intolerances to eggs. If we had a little chicken running around producing eggs, that'd be so great.
If we had a little, Maggie would eat it.
Maggie would eat it, yeah.
I would like to have some chicken. So.
Yeah.
One day.
We'll do that one day.
Maybe we could figure out how to feed our chickens
compost soil. Have the microbes. It would be the healthiest chicken ever.
Would that be the funniest thing? Maybe we can not be allergic to their eggs because they're super chickens.
Maybe. That'd be cool. I hear it's the sulfur though.
Yeah, I know.
But what's weird is that I can take MSM and not have a problem, and that's just pure sulfur.
I'm determined to come to the end of the bottom of this sulfur issue. Mm-hmm. I don't know, but I think there's more to it. Like you said, Dr. Massey, our good friend, will talk about how good sulfur is for so many things, but I don't think he's talking about the sulfur that we get from the byproduct of eating some of our foods. Mm-hmm. There's sulfur foods, and then there's sulfur in MSM form, and there's I don't know. I think there's something that I'm missing, but.
Oh, wait. Well, we don't normally do this wrap-up here on the live show.
I know. That was fun. Cool. Yeah. Thanks for hanging in on a Friday, everybody. And Ziggy, it's been real. Guest 5790 and 2729. We really appreciate you guys spending time with us and everybody else who's listening.
I have a bunch of people that are listening, but they're not involved in the chat room. That's
Join the party. Join the Friday fiesta. What did I call it? The Feisty Friday.
Feisty Friday. Guest 2729. A lot of people with guest names. Anyway, thanks guys for being a part of all this. We really appreciate it.
I miss Farmer Mark. He should have been in here today.
I know. Yeah.
Darn.
He should have been here.
We'll get him. Mark. We'll find him again.
So this was episode 418. So we'll have this available very soon. The problem is that it takes a long time for us to produce the shows, and it takes me a long time. So we get bombarded with other stuff, and we're trying to get that out there. So all the links and everything will be available at extremehealthradio.com/418. And this actual podcast will be available on YouTube way before it becomes available on our website. So stay tuned to YouTube if you guys want to register or subscribe or whatever it is people do. I think it's subscribe, so people can subscribe on there, and they'll get notifications of our podcast and stuff. So in any event, thanks for listening. Pass it on to your friends, and I appreciate you guys so much. And we'll catch you guys next.
Oh, and one more thing.
Yeah. I
was telling one of our guests in the chat room who asked the question about the composting on the veranda.
Oh yeah.
I would love if people start trying some of these methods and remineralize and get their soil all legit to send us pictures. I get so excited about that because I want to post that more as we go with our own garden. We'll take some pictures as we get our new garden going.
Yeah, that's right.
I'd love to hear success stories and just see pictures. Pictures make me really happy of people's successes. So if anybody wants to share their gardening photos, I just send them our way.
What would be a good way to do that? Hashtag them on Instagram? Would that be a way?
Oh, that'd be perfect.
What should be a hashtag? EHR Garden.
There you go.
How about that?
EHR Garden. Okay, we'll write that in the notes too. Good one.
EHR Garden.
EHR Garden. Okay.
There you go.
And join us on Instagram. I'm having so much fun on Instagram.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah. Okay, guys, that was a lot of fun. Thanks for putting up with our ramblings at the end, and hopefully you got something out of them and enjoy your weekend. And we'll catch you guys on the next episode.
Hey, everybody! This is Josie, Justin's mum. Don't tell him, but I know he would absolutely be really happy if you would sign up to his free weekly newsletter. And don't forget to share this with all your friends. This is the buzzing bumblebee signing off.
That's so good.
Oh my gosh.
No material on this blog is intended to suggest that you should not seek professional medical care. Always work with qualified medical professionals, even if you educate yourself in the field of live food, nutrition, and alternative medicine. I'm not a doctor, nor am I offering readers medical advice of any kind. None of the information offered here should be interpreted as a diagnosis of any disease, nor an attempt to treat or prevent any disease or condition.